The moment Owen Ellis stepped onto the pristine marble floors of his luxury resort, he knew something was off. The air smelled of fresh orchids, the chandeliers sparkled, and the staff moved with well-rehearsed efficiency, but there was something beneath the surface that didn't sit right with him. He hadn't built this company from scratch, but he had bought it 10 years ago with the vision of making it a world-class hospitality brand. Lately, though, he'd been hearing murmurs, complaints about poor customer service, staff treating guests differently based on appearances. His executives assured him it was nothing. Just entitled customers expecting too much, they said, but Owen wasn't convinced. Tired of second-hand reports, he decided to see for himself. Owen was rarely on site, and most employees had never met him in person. The resort was one of 5 under the company's name, and his visits were usually handled by upper management. But today, he wasn't coming as the CEO. He had arrived under a false identity, a middle-aged writer named Robert Calloway, a man who had supposedly saved up for years to afford a weekend at the exclusive retreat. His hair was slightly grayer thanks to a temporary dye job, and his neatly tailored suits were replaced with a basic polo and worn-out sneakers. No one batted an eye when he checked in. The receptionist, a young woman named Emily, gave him a polite but distant smile, barely making eye contact. The service was functional but cold. Nothing outright rude, but certainly not the luxury experience they advertised. Then, just as he was about to head to his suite, something caught his attention. At the far end of the lobby, an older woman stood at the entrance of the resort's fine dining restaurant. Her clothes were faded, her hair slightly frizzy, but her posture was confident. She carried herself like someone who belonged, despite the way the staff looked at her. A waiter, a tall man with slicked-back hair and an air of arrogance, blocked her path. "Ma'am, this restaurant is for guests only," he said, barely concealing his disdain. The woman smiled patiently. "I am a guest." The waiter's eyes flicked over her clothes before he shook his head. "I don't think so. This is an exclusive dining experience. If you're looking for something more affordable, there's a cafe down by the beach." Owen felt his jaw tighten. The woman reached into her purse and pulled out a key card. "I'm staying in one of the suites." "I believe that qualifies me to dine here, doesn't it?" The waiter hesitated, then forced a smile. "Of course, but unfortunately we're fully booked tonight." That was a lie. Owen had personally checked the reservation system earlier to see how easy it was for a regular guest to secure a table. There were plenty of openings. The woman's face fell slightly. "I see." Owen had seen enough. He stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said, making his voice sound unsure, as if he were just another guest. "I was just about to get a table myself." "Would you mind if we dined together?" The woman looked at him, surprised. The waiter frowned. The waiter stammered. "You said you were full," Owen continued, his expression neutral. "But if we're dining together, surely you can find space for us." The waiter hesitated, then forced another smile. "Of course, sir. Right this way." As they were led to a table, the woman turned to Owen and gave him a knowing look. "That was kind of you," she said. "But I have a feeling you didn't do that just to be nice." Owen chuckled. "Maybe I just don't like seeing people treated unfairly." She studied him for a moment, then extended her hand. "Deanna Monroe." He shook it. "Robert Calloway." Deanna tilted her head slightly. "That's not your real name, is it?" Owen blinked. He hadn't expected to be figured out so quickly. Deanna smiled. "Don't worry, your secret's safe with me, but I do hope you're here to fix whatever mess is happening in this place." Owen exhaled slowly. He had come undercover to see if the rumors were true. Now, he had no doubt, and he wasn't leaving until he fixed it. Owen sat across from Deanna, watching the waiter disappear toward the kitchen with an expression that barely concealed his irritation. Deanna lifted the menu, scanning it with a quiet patience that told Owen she'd dealt with this kind of treatment before. A server approached their table this time, a young woman with dark hair neatly pulled into a bun. She greeted them with a genuine smile, her presence noticeably different from the waiter who had tried to turn Deanna away. "Good evening. My name is Rachel and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with something to drink? Deanna glanced at Owen before responding. Just water for me. Owen ordered the same, studying Rachel's demeanor. She seemed attentive, professional, but there was a tightness in her face that suggested she was carrying more than just a tray of drinks. As Rachel walked away, Deanna leaned slightly forward. You're watching everything, aren't you? Owen nodded. It's the only way to understand what's really happening here. Deanna set her menu down. Then let me save you some time. The staff isn't the problem, not all of them at least. The issue is how they're trained, or rather, how they're conditioned. Owen frowned. Conditioned? Deanna gestured subtly toward another table across the room. A couple sat there, both dressed in designer clothing, their conversation punctuated by laughter. Their waiter hovered near them, refilling their glasses before they were even half empty, nodding at every word they spoke. Watch how they treat those two, Deanna said. Every detail is catered to them because they look like they belong. Meanwhile, someone like me. I'm an inconvenience. Owen folded his hands on the table. You've been here before. Deanna gave a small nod. I travel often. I like staying in places like this, but I've learned that luxury doesn't always mean respect. Rachel returned with their waters, setting them down carefully. Are you ready to order, or would you like a few more minutes? Deanna smiled. I'll have the seafood risotto. Owen ordered the same, then watched as Rachel hesitated before speaking again. If I may, I'd recommend the house salad to start. It's light but flavorful. Owen appreciated the suggestion. That sounds good, let's add that. Rachel acknowledged the order and walked back toward the kitchen. Deanna rested her chin on her hand. She's different from the others, Owen agreed. She seems like she actually cares. Before Deanna could respond, the same waiter who had tried to turn her away approached their table. He carried himself stiffly, his previous arrogance now tempered by forced politeness. My apologies for the misunderstanding earlier, he said. I hope you're enjoying your evening. Deanna met his gaze evenly. We will be, assuming there are no more misunderstandings. The waiter's jaw tightened slightly before he nodded and walked away. Owen exhaled through his nose. He didn't like that. Of course not, Deanna said. People like him don't like being corrected. Their salads arrived, and as they ate, Owen continued to observe the room. The pattern became clearer the longer he watched. Guests who appeared wealthy received immediate attention, while those who seemed more modest were left waiting longer for service. It wasn't always overt, but it was enough to create a divide. Rachel returned to check on them, her professionalism unwavering. Owen decided to test something. How long have you been working here? He asked. Rachel hesitated. About 2 years. And how do you like it? Her answer came too quickly. It's a great place to work. Deanna lifted an eyebrow. That sounded rehearsed. Rachel shifted slightly on her feet. I just mean it's a well-respected resort. Owen kept his expression neutral. But, Rachel glanced toward the kitchen, then exhaled softly, but it can be difficult. The expectations are high, which is fine, but sometimes it feels like we're expected to treat certain guests differently. Deanna didn't seem surprised. You mean guests who don't fit a certain image? Rachel hesitated, then nodded. I've seen situations where a guest wasn't given the same level of service because they didn't look the part. It's not something we're told outright, but it's understood. Owen pressed further. And what happens if you don't follow that unspoken rule? Rachel's lips pressed together. You don't get the best shifts, you get assigned to the less visible tables, and if you push back too much, well, people don't last long here if they don't play along. Owen exchanged a glance with Deanna. This was exactly what he'd feared. Their entrees arrived, and as they ate, Owen's thoughts churned. The problem wasn't just one rude waiter. It was a culture that had been allowed to take root, one that prioritized image over genuine hospitality. As their meal wrapped up, Rachel returned with the check, placing it in front of Owen. But before he could reach for it, Deanna slid it toward herself. My treat, she said. Owen shook his head. I appreciate it, but I insist. Deanna smiled knowingly. You'll have other ways to pay me back. Rachel collected the payment, and as she walked away, Deanna folded her hands on the table. So, what's your next move? Owen already knew. I'm going deeper, he said. The restaurant is just the beginning. Deanna nodded approvingly. Then I hope you're ready for what you'll find. Owen had built his career by fixing problems, but this wasn't just about business. It was about something deeper, something that needed to change at its core, and he wasn't leaving until it did. Owen spent the next morning walking the resort grounds, blending in as just another guest. He wanted to see how deep the problem ran, beyond the restaurant. At the poolside lounge, he watched as a couple in expensive swimwear received immediate service, their drinks arriving within minutes. Meanwhile, a family dressed in casual summer clothes had been waiting for someone to take their order for nearly 20 minutes. Owen caught the father politely flagging down a server, only to be told someone would be with them shortly. 10 minutes passed before anyone finally approached them. Outside the spa, a woman in a simple sundress stood at the reception desk, confusion on her face. The receptionist, an older man with a crisp uniform, spoke to her in polite but clipped tones. Owen caught snippets of their conversation as he passed. There must be a mistake, the woman said. I booked this appointment 3 weeks ago. I'm afraid we don't have anything under your name, the receptionist replied. Perhaps you booked at a different location. No, I'm sure it was here. I'm terribly sorry, but we're fully booked today. Owen saw the woman glance at the schedule behind the desk. There were openings. The receptionist followed her gaze and subtly shifted his stance, blocking her view. If you'd like, I can put you on a wait list, but I can't guarantee anything. The woman hesitated, then nodded. I guess that's fine. Owen clenched his jaw. It was the same pattern over and over. He needed to push further. That afternoon, he approached the housekeeping staff, striking up casual conversations as they went about their work. Most kept their responses polite and brief, clearly wary of saying too much. But one woman, an older housekeeper named Marta, gave him something to work with. It's a good job, she said carefully. Good pay, benefits, but some things could be better. What things? Owen asked. She wiped her hands on her apron, glancing toward the hallway before lowering her voice. Management has favorites. The ones they think fit the image, they get better shifts, better treatment. The rest of us, we get what's left. Owen frowned. And what happens if you speak up? Marta let out a short breath, something between a laugh and a sigh. You don't. Owen thanked her and continued his observations throughout the resort. By evening, he had seen enough. This wasn't just an issue with one department, it was systemic, and he was done watching. That night, he booked a private meeting room and sent word to the department heads, instructing them to gather immediately. He didn't use his real name, only stating that their attendance was required by upper management. When they arrived, they found him standing at the head of the table, no longer dressed as Robert Calloway. His usual sharp suit replaced the casual attire, his presence commanding. The resort manager, a man in his 50s with a neatly trimmed beard, frowned. Who are you? And why are we? Owen cut him off. You don't recognize me? The room fell silent. I'm Owen Ellis, he said. I own this resort. Shock rippled through the group. A few exchanged uneasy glances. The restaurant manager, the same man responsible for overseeing the waiter from the night before, paled slightly. Owen let the weight of his words settle before continuing. I've spent the past 2 days here not as your boss, but as a guest. And what I saw was unacceptable. The spa director shifted in her seat. Sir, if there were any issues, I assure you, the only thing you can assure me of is that you've let a culture of discrimination take root under your watch, Owen said. I watched guests being treated differently based on how they looked. I watched staff being pressured into following unspoken rules that go against everything this resort is supposed to stand for. The restaurant manager cleared his throat. I'm sure there were misunderstandings. Our staff is trained in guest service excellence. Owen's gaze hardened. Do you think I'm an idiot? The man stiffened. I watched one of your waiters refuse service to a paying guest because she didn't look the part. And don't tell me it was a mistake because I saw him lie to her face. Silence. Owen turned to the resort manager. How long has this been going on? The man hesitated before responding. We cater to a certain clientele. Our staff is trained to provide the highest level of service to those who expect it. Owen's voice was calm but sharp. And who decides who expects it? The manager faltered. Owen continued. This resort was built on the promise of luxury hospitality for all our guests, not just the ones who look a certain way. And yet, you've allowed an environment where guests are judged before they even take a seat. The spa director spoke up. I assure you, we don't discriminate. Then explain why I watched a guest be turned away despite open appointments on the schedule. The woman's mouth opened, then closed. Owen let the silence stretch. Effective immediately, he said, there will be changes. He turned to the restaurant manager. Your waiter from last night, he's gone. And if I find out you encouraged that kind of behavior, you'll be next. The manager looked as if he wanted to argue, but one glance at Owen's expression told him it would be useless. Owen shifted his attention to the resort manager. Starting tomorrow, every department will undergo a full review. Hiring practices, service policies, staff treatment. If I find anyone reinforcing the toxic culture I witnessed, they won't have a job here. He addressed the entire room. This isn't a warning, this is a fact. The way this resort has been operating is over. If you can't get on board with that, leave now. No one moved. Owen exhaled, steadying his voice. We are in the hospitality business. That means treating every guest with respect, not just the ones who wear designer clothes. Not just the ones who fit your idea of luxury, everyone. He let his words sink in before delivering his final statement. You all have a choice, fix this or find somewhere else to work. With that, he walked out, leaving them to absorb the new reality. Tomorrow, everything would change. The next morning, Owen arrived at the resort's staff quarters before the first shift began. The air was thick with an uncomfortable tension, word of the previous night's meeting having spread faster than he anticipated. Employees lingered in small groups, their conversations hushed but urgent. Some looked uncertain, others wary. They knew changes were coming, but no one knew exactly what that meant for them. He stepped into the break room where the resort manager and department heads had gathered. Unlike the night before, there was no arrogance in their expressions. Some avoided his gaze entirely. The restaurant manager sat stiffly, his fingers tapping against the table while the spa director kept her arms crossed, her face unreadable. Owen didn't waste time. He informed them that an external audit team would be reviewing every aspect of the resort's operations, ensuring that biased behaviors weren't just addressed temporarily, but eradicated completely. Any employee found deliberately discriminating against guests based on appearance or background would be immediately dismissed. The message was clear: this wasn't just a superficial adjustment. This was a complete overhaul. He didn't stay long. His real focus was on the employees working the floor, the ones who had been affected by the toxic culture but hadn't had the power to change it. As he moved through the resort, he found Rachel at the restaurant, setting up tables before the lunch rush. She looked up when she saw him approach. I heard what happened last night, she said, keeping her voice low. People are nervous. They should be, Owen replied. Things are going to be different. Rachel hesitated. Different how? For starters, that waiter who refused to serve Deanna is no longer employed here. Relief flickered across her face. He wasn't the only one who acted like that. And he won't be the last person let go, Owen assured her. But I need help identifying the employees who were contributing to the problem and the ones who were just following bad leadership. Rachel wiped her hands on her apron. A lot of people felt like they didn't have a choice. They just did what the managers wanted because they were afraid of losing hours or getting stuck with the worst shifts. Not anymore, Owen said. I'm setting up an anonymous reporting system. Anyone who has experienced or witnessed discrimination can come forward without fear of retaliation. But I also need people who are willing to step up and help build the culture we should have had from the start. Rachel considered that for a moment. There are good people here, they just haven't had a voice. They do now, Owen said. And I want you to be one of them. Her eyes widened slightly. Me. You care about how guests are treated. You weren't afraid to be honest when I asked you about the problems here. That's the kind of leadership we need. Rachel hesitated, as if unsure whether to believe him. Then slowly she nodded. Okay, I'm in. Owen nodded in approval. Good, because this is just the beginning. He spent the rest of the day meeting with employees across different departments, gathering insight on how things had operated under the previous management. Housekeeping staff revealed that certain guests were prioritized over others, often receiving extra attention while others were given the bare minimum. The concierge admitted that they had been told to subtly discourage lower-paying guests from booking premium experiences. Even the valet team had stories of guests being treated differently based on their cars. By the end of the day, Owen had a full picture of just how deep the problem ran. It wasn't just a few bad actors, it was an ingrained mindset that had been allowed to fester. He called for a mandatory staff meeting that evening. Employees filled the resort's main conference hall, some sitting, others standing along the back wall. There was a nervous energy in the air. Owen stood at the front of the room, waiting until the murmurs died down. Then he spoke. I won't waste your time by repeating what you already know, he began. This resort has been operating under a culture that values appearances over genuine hospitality. That ends today. A few employees shifted uneasily. Others looked relieved. Some of you have been part of the problem. Those people will no longer work here. Some of you have been silent because you felt like you had no choice. I'm giving you that choice now. He let that settle before continuing. We are redefining what it means to work here. Every guest will be treated with the same level of respect. No one will be judged by their clothes, their car, or how much money they look like they have. If you can't align with that standard, this is your opportunity to leave. A few people exchanged glances, but no one moved. Owen pressed on. We will be implementing new training, restructuring leadership roles, and ensuring that promotions are based on actual merit, not favoritism. If you've been overlooked because you didn't fit the image of what management wanted, that changes now. He scanned the room. I know change is uncomfortable, but this isn't just about fixing a PR issue. This is about building something that actually deserves to be called a world-class resort. The room was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, Rachel stepped forward. I think a lot of us have wanted this for a long time, she said. We just didn't think it would ever happen. Owen nodded. It's happening now. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Deanna was waiting for him when he left the meeting, leaning casually against one of the marble columns in the lobby. That was quite the speech, she said. Owen exhaled. It's going to take more than words to fix this, she smiled. True, but you've taken the first real step. That's more than most people in your position would do. He studied her for a moment. I never asked, why do you stay at places like this when you know what you might face? Deanna's expression softened. Because I refuse to let people like that decide where I belong. And because places like this can be better, they just need someone willing to make them better. Owen nodded slowly. Deanna adjusted the strap of her purse. I have a feeling the next time I come back, this place will be different. It will be, Owen promised. She gave him one last approving glance before walking toward the exit. Owen stood there for a moment, watching her go. The resort had been built on an illusion of exclusivity. Now, it had the chance to become something real, and he was going to make sure it did. Owen spent the next few days overseeing the resort's transformation, ensuring that the changes weren't just symbolic but deeply ingrained into daily operations. The first step had been making it clear to all employees that biased service would no longer be tolerated. The second step was ensuring those who had been overlooked finally had a path forward. He started by meeting with employees one-on-one, giving them space to speak freely. Housekeeping staff admitted they had been pressured to prioritize certain rooms over others, meaning high-paying guests received exceptional service while others got the bare minimum. The concierge team revealed they had been subtly encouraged to steer certain guests away from premium experiences, ensuring that only the right kind of clientele occupied the best spots. Even the security team had been given unspoken instructions to monitor guests who didn't fit a particular image. Owen knew that policies alone wouldn't fix this. He needed to change the way people thought about their jobs. He gathered the department heads once again, but this time, instead of a reprimand, he led with expectations. The restaurant's new manager, a woman named Carla, who had been a senior server for years, but had been passed over for promotions, outlined new service protocols. Every guest was to be treated with the same level of attentiveness, regardless of appearance. The same applied across all departments. The changes weren't met without resistance. Some employees quietly resigned, unwilling to adjust to the new standards. Owen let them go without hesitation. Those who remained had to prove they could uphold the new culture. One afternoon, as he was reviewing the resort's progress, he noticed a shift in the energy of the staff. Employees moved with a different sense of purpose. There was no longer a clear divide between who got priority treatment and who didn't. Servers at the restaurant attended to each table with equal enthusiasm, and the concierge now welcomed all guests with the same level of attentiveness. Even the poolside staff, previously guilty of catering primarily to guests in designer swimwear, now worked with an even hand. Still, Owen knew that real change wouldn't be measured in a few days. It had to be sustained. To reinforce this, he introduced a new mentorship program. Employees who had been undervalued, like Rachel, who had shown leadership potential, were paired with experienced professionals committed to the resort's new direction. Carla took Rachel under her wing, ensuring she was trained for a management role. Others, like Marta from housekeeping, were given leadership positions, ensuring that service standards were upheld from the ground up. Owen also implemented an anonymous reporting system. Employees who witnessed discrimination or favoritism could report it without fear of retaliation. He wanted to ensure that no one would ever feel powerless again. One evening, as he walked the grounds, he spotted Rachel near the outdoor lounge, speaking with a young server who looked nervous. Rachel's voice carried confidence now, something that had been missing before. She was explaining how to handle guest requests with fairness, ensuring that no one was ignored. The young server nodded, taking in her words with genuine interest. Owen watched for a moment before approaching. Rachel turned when she noticed him. "The new hires are adjusting," she said. "Some are still finding their footing, but they're learning." Owen nodded. "That's all I can ask for." She hesitated before speaking again. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why did you do this?" she asked. "Most people in your position wouldn't have bothered." Owen exhaled slowly, considering his answer. "Because I built this company with the belief that hospitality should be about making people feel welcome," he said. "Somewhere along the way that got lost. And if I don't fix it, who will?" Rachel absorbed his words before nodding. "Well, it's working." Owen didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked around, watching the resort operate in a way it should have from the beginning. He knew there was still work to be done. Culture didn't change overnight, but the foundation had been laid. And this time, he would make sure it lasted.